Hello everybody, my name is Zeke, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about my favorite weird books. Personally, I love a good weird book, something that's going to surprise me, something that is going to be unique and different and unexpected. And I believe wholeheartely that weird has no specific genre and that things can be weird in many different ways, and that a little bit of weirdness in my reading experience will usually work for me. And so I tend to try to look for weird books whenever I can, and it's hit or miss. I gotta be honest. I feel like if a book is weird, it's either gonna really do it for me or I'm gonna hate it for one reason or another. But some of my favorite books, I think, have weird elements, and there are definitely a lot of weird books that I do end up enjoying. This video is kind of inspired by a reading vlog I just did where I read specifically weird/unsettling books, because personally to me, I feel like a lot of the weird books I read are unsettling in some way, though there are exceptions to that. And I think I got a new favorite from that vlog. So you might be hearing about that in a little bit. I guess we'll see. But I think this list is going to be pretty expansive. I'm going to talk about 6 books. And a lot of them have, speculative elements just because that tends to make a book weird, at least to me. But they're all weird in different ways. They're not all speculative fiction. And I feel like some of them are weird because of their content, some because of their tone, some because of how they're told, some because of their style, some are a mix of all of those together, but they're all just strange in some way and often unsettling. But I will go through them and tell you all about them. So the first book I want to talk about is the book I just read in that reading vlog, and that's Out There by Kate Folk. This is a short story collection, but still counts as a book to me. And as the title suggests, these stories are out there, they're weird, and these specifically are very weird with their content. I feel like the style they're told in is pretty straightforward. This is a very readable collection, but the content of the stories are often very strange, very unsettling, very unexpected. I think atmospherically, a lot of these stories can get weird and also just very plot specific. I mean, short stories, I feel like the majority of short stories really have to have a good plot. And this focus in a lot of short stories is the plot because you don't have a lot of time to tell your short story. And so these short stories really make the most of that time in telling engaging but strange little stories about various things. For example, the first and last stories are about this kind of phenomenon where these companies have developed these things called blots, which are like fake people that kind of go on dating apps and like scam women and want to take them away to Big Sur. And it's just, there's lots of weird concepts that are really executed very well, and I really just love how readable this collection is, while still giving that weird sense of ominous whatever presence, and also just being constantly unexpected and engaging. And so that's definitely an amazing short story collection, amazing weird book that I definitely recommend. Also, if sometimes weird books turn you off because you think they're going to be hard to read or hard to get through or hard to understand, this is not any of that. It is weird without sacrificing readability, and for that, it's definitely one of my new favorite weird books. The next one I want to talk about is very different from that. That's Nessie by Susanna Clark. And this is not weird because of the plot. I feel like the plot in this book is pretty straightforward once we actually get into it, but it is the getting into it that is the weird part. I think even the cover kind of gives you an idea. This is a weird cover. This is our protagonist right here. Does not look like a normal person and is not. Basically, we're following this protagonist who is somewhere in a labyrinth and is writing all these things and has a shoddy memory, and the various people he knows, he gives weird names. He doesn't really know what's going on. And it's just that weird sense of tone and atmosphere that I'd really say makes this such a weird book. Even if the plot ends up being straightforward in the end, I love this book so much because of the atmosphere it builds with this weirdness, and also because of how it kind of slowly draws you into the story by being so strange. And this is another one that I think I would recommend to a lot of people within reason. If you are a person who reads a book and gets to a point where they're confused and gets really frustrated and doesn't want to read it anymore, I would not recommend this book, because at the start of the book you're going to be very confused because it is very weirdly written. It is a very weird perspective to be in, but if you are okay with being a little confused for the sake of a story or for the sake of an atmosphere, then this is definitely the book for you. Highly recommend. And it's pretty short too. And also, I think the writing is another thing. This book has beautiful writing and a beautiful story at heart. Even if it is a little simple and not as weird as everything else in the book, it's well worth your time. Okay, the next one is quite the change of pace. This is a murder mystery, and that's Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead by a name I'm about to butcher because it is, I think, a Russian author, and that's Olga Tokarczuk. Definitely said that obscenely wrong. But the weird thing about this book is the narrator and the perspective we are in. We are in the perspective of an old woman, and she's not very active. She's not like doing a lot. She's not like a detective like in a lot of murder mysteries. So it's kind of subversive in that way. And also she's an unreliable narrator, so that makes it very weird. And the way this is told is very weird. It's not very fast paced. It's very slow. It takes its time with the story, but it still has a pretty good twist. It still has a very engaging kind of plot line, even if it is slower. This isn't necessarily weird, but I think the atmosphere is very unsettling too, so that kind of lends itself to this kind of weird style of narration and this kind of weird perspective that we are in. So this is just, I think, very good as a subversive murder mystery that it will definitely surprise you and also kind of take you on a different route than I think a classic mystery book or a classic thriller will take you on. And I think that's what makes this definitely a favorite for me, because I don't read a lot of mysteries, but the few that I have read have been semi-similar. I'm not saying all mysteries are the same. They're definitely not. There are definitely a lot of innovation in the genre, but I think this is a really good example of something that will subvert expectations because of tone and because of perspective specifically. Okay, the next I think maybe is the most classically strange in this list. That's Vida Nostra. Another name I'm gonna butcher, but they're like a husband and wife duo, Marina and Sergei Dyachenko. And they write, this is kind of dark academia, but it has fantasy elements too. And there's just a sense of weirdness throughout all the places that we're in, and also the storyline itself. The main character is kind of whisked away from her life and threatened if she doesn't go to the school setting to learn about all sorts of strange things. And I think the weird parts are her getting there, this random man that like makes her go. There's a lot of weird events involving vomiting up coins that are definitely strange to read. And also just the school setting itself is very ominous. It's very unsettling. There are lots of weird elements. The older students are weird and just creepy too. And this is just really good too. I mean, the second book was translated recently. I still haven't gotten the chance to read it, but it's very different for, I think, the way it combines like fantastical elements and dark academia, and just very engaging as well. And I think that like creepy, weird vibe is what really makes this book. And so I definitely recommend this to basically anyone who likes like darker, kind of dark academia, or just looking for something in like the fantasy-esque genre that is maybe a little different and then maybe a little darker. And this is definitely the book for you. Now, next is my chance to talk about my favorite author, Octavia E. Butler, with Dawn, which is, I think, probably her weirdest book in my opinion. That's a hard thing to say. She writes a lot of weird stuff. But this is the start of a trilogy, but all three books, they're linked, but you can kind of you don't have to read all of them. You definitely should start with this, because why would you not want to start with the first book? But you don't have to read. It's not a big commitment if you decide you don't want to read the entire trilogy. And this is weird because of its plot and its premise. Basically, it's this union between humans and aliens, and Earth is destroyed. These aliens have kidnapped a few humans who they need for various purposes that I don't want to get into. But it's kind of the birth of this symbiotic relationship that's kind of necessary for both species to survive, ? And this is very weird because of where the story ends up going, especially in later books if you decide to read them. It just gets very strange, very unsettling for a lot of reasons, very uncomfortable because of the interactions between these humans and these aliens, and also just very good. She talks about what it means to be human a lot in her books, and also I just think this is just such a weird exploration of this relationship that she builds, and these two just very different, completely different like species. We have the aliens, we have the humans, just learning to have to exist with each other and getting used to each other and all these strange scenarios that come with it. She just creates such a real depiction of how human interactions work with her books, and I think this is a great example of this, and is also just very strange. If you're looking for something strange, this will definitely be strange, but it is also kind of gross at times and definitely unsettling. So be prepared if you decide to read it, for sure. The last one I want to recommend is a lot more lighthearted. This is a very heartwarming book, I think, even though it is very strange, and that's Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson. This is about these two kids who spontaneously combust into flames, and their parents can't really handle them because they're spontaneously combusting into flames, and also their own problems within this family. And so mother calls an old college friend, acquaintance, to kind of look after her kids and figure everything out, and it just ends up being a very heartwarming story of found family and just getting through hard situations. The bursting into flame obviously is a metaphor and has deeper meaning than just bursting into flame, but that is definitely also a part of the book. Like that's very much part of the plot, is that they burst into flame. And so that's obviously, if you couldn't tell, what makes this a weird book, but not unsettling. This book is not unsettling. If you're looking for something that is weird but heartwarming, weird but not creepy, weird but not unsettling, weird but fun and nice, even though it has some sad moments, but it's a very emotion-filled book. I think very different from what you may think of when you think of weird books, especially if you're me and like to read weird books that are also unsettling. This definitely surprised me when I read it, because it was not what I expected, and it was very different and nice to read. And I think a lot of people, this got pretty popular, and it's definitely worth the hype. I don't think the story or the writing is necessarily like the most profound or beautiful thing in the world, but I think it's really about these characters, these relationships, and the emotional depth. That's the main purpose of this book. And I really like it, and I think people should read it. And that is it. That's all I have to say about that book, so read it if you want to. Okay, so those are the 6 weird books that I'd say are some of my favorites. A lot of variety. I want to say a lot of variety. I don't know if I am being a little delusional. I know a lot of them are speculative fiction, fantasy, sci-fi in some way, but I think even if they are, they're very different tonally, they're very different with their plots, and also we have Nothing to See Here, which really feels more like just general fiction, even if it has this speculative element, and we have a murder mystery, so you can't complain that much, and we have a short story collection, so there is variety. Hopefully you found something, at least one thing in this vlog that seemed interested, and if you did, please pick it up and let me know what you think of it, or if you have read any of these books, what you think of them, if you agree with my selections, or I'm always looking for more recommendations. If there are any other books related to what I've talked about today that you think I might like, put it in the comments. I will read them eventually, hopefully, if they sound interesting. So that's gonna do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, feel free to like, comment, or subscribe if you want. I try to post videos once a week. Sometimes it's more and sometimes it's less. And I will see you in the next one.